There was always one or two show albums in the house. He loved Gods and Dolls and Kiss Me Kate, I think were his absolute favorites. My parents talked a lot about what South Pacific had meant to them as survivors of the war experience, how much Oklahoma meant to them. But they were just normal, lower middle class people who went to the theater because it was something better than film. It was not another Joan Crawford movie at the neighborhood theater. It was, just finer. They loved Death of a Salesman. But those are the shows they saw. They saw the big hits, the mainstream. They weren't off searching out quirky, new, interesting countercultural playwrights. But I was also aware theater was special. And then suddenly, it seems, to me, there are playwrights, American playwrights springing up everywhere. And Edward Albee and his two producers, Dick Barr and Clinton Wilder, started this group called Playwrights Unit, and they started giving young playwrights a theater and a small budget to do their plays. It was like 1 week of rehearsal, very brief, and then like 4 performances two on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, usually at the Cherry Lane. But they also rented the Van Damme Theater sometimes, which is where Boysen and the Band was first seen. When I got to New York, 2 of the biggest hits in town were Iceman Cometh with Jason Robards, which was the beginning of the O'Neill revival, his career and the director Jose Quintero, and Ted Mann as artistic director of something called Circle in the Square, which became a very important off-Broadway theater. The other side of Sheridan Square on Christopher Street at the Theater de Lis was La Lenya in the Threepenny Opera. Barbara Cook was in it, B. Arthur. That was a huge hit too. So off-Broadway did not begin, for my generation, with La Mama or Chino or any of those. It was already sort of in place. And people made a big thing of coming to the Village to see a play. It was sort of, the Village was romantic. Christopher Street was a very romantic street in those days.
Love, valor, compassion.
Again, Manhattan Theater Club. This time I had been going to Circle Rep, and they not only had a playwrights lab where on Friday they'd read a new script, they also had a director's lab where young directors would do scenes. And I'd seen 4 or 5 by this actor, Joe Mantello, and I thought they were always wonderfully directed. So when I said to Lynn, I'd like Joe Mantello directed, she said, "Who's he?" I said, "He's an actor." "Well, what's he directed?" "Well, he's done workshops, but he's never directed a commercial production as far as I know." "Oh no, we can't have that." And Joe did a spectacular job.
Yeah.
He has been more than generous in acknowledging the role I played in his career, as I hope I've been generous acknowledging people like Elaine May, the role they played in my career. And I said, Lynn Meadow, women, the notorious producer Adele Holzer, who ended up in jail twice for scam. She produced The Ritz on Broadway, and she transferred Bad Habits from the Astor Place Theater to the Booth. Corpus Christi, the story there is about gay men having gay men. I was not generous enough to include gay women at that point in my life, I guess. I wasn't interested in their saga. I was interested in the men's side of it. We didn't have famous people in it, but no one turned it down because it was too gay or bad for their career. And we were rehearsing, and then one day someone came and said, "Have you seen the Post today?" And there was a gossip column by this guy called Ward Morehouse II or III. And he said, "There's this obscene play in rehearsal in that theater club which has Jesus and the disciples, lots of nudity, on stage fellatio and anal intercourse." And then I just created this tempest, none of which was true. There was no nudity in the play. There was one chaste kiss when Judas betrays Christ, but just made up a story. So suddenly, the phones are ringing, death threats, and that theater club is canceling the play. It was just, so by the time Manhattan Theatre Club came to their senses because they were so denounced by the artistic community for lack of backbone. The only people allowed to see the play were subscribers. You had to go through metal detectors to get into the theater. Most of my friends, I could not get into the theater, but you could not go to the box office. So we played. They had a lot of subscribers, so it was never empty, but there were always empty seats to a play that everyone wanted to see. I was totally unprepared for this. But as I said, it was based on, then they called the Archbishop of New York for a comment. Well, what do they expect to say? A play that has on-stage nudity, Christ and apostles doing fellatio and anal intercourse. What are they going to say? We welcome this new look. Son of a bitch, Ward Morehouse, when the play finally opened, said, because of the heavy pressure on him, McNally has removed all the offending passages.
Oh.
There's no more nudity. And The Rink is an interesting story. Phone rings, and this is John Kander. Hi, on the other line, this is Fred Ebb. Certainly knew who they were. And they said, we have this show we like. We think we've written some really good songs for. What we'd like to do is you come up here and let us play the 10 songs we have for you and see if they suggest some sort of plot to your story. So I said, okay. So I got in the subway, went up, heard the songs, and I'd say all but maybe one or two were in the show as it opened. But when you hear a song like The Rink, Here We Go Round the Rink, clearly it takes place in a rolling skating rink. Clearly, the emphasis of the story is mother-daughter generational conflict. But I came up with a plot pretty quickly that they liked. But I said to myself, I think the best musicals get written together, not connect the dots. So I said, never again will I work on a musical that the score pre-exists the book. They should happen together, or the book should be mother, father to the parent to the lyrics and music. But I still enjoyed the experience. And Cheetah, the legendary Cheetah, oh my God, Maria and West Side Story. So I'm like, I can't believe this. And at the very last minute, somehow suddenly, Liza Minnelli was in it. And I was like, I can't believe this. Cheetah, it was like you learn, there's no substitute for great technique. Cheetah hits the bullseye 8 shows a week. Liza's totally improvisatory. It still hits the bullseye. At the last second, the arrow lands where she wants it to land. And I learned so much. I used to stand in the back of the theater and watch them, what I could learn as a writer. The discipline of the one and the generosity of the other. And I said, well, I was saying to myself, who are you saving it for? Liza gives it away every performance, or did, many years ago. I thought she was one of the most staggeringly, abundantly, naturally gifted people I've ever had the pleasure of being in the same room with. And Cheetah was one of the most abundantly, and still is, just did the visit with her 3 years ago. The technique, it's just, but it's all technique, and it doesn't mean it's not heartfelt, but it's craftsmanship. Liza, it's not craftsmanship, but she has that instinct to land on her feet, And theater is the balance between the tension between those two. Be free, wild, go places you've never dared go, but know you're going to end up on your feet. You owe that to yourself and the audience and your collaborators. And I think of both those women, how much they taught me working on that strange show, which I liked. The book, I got hammered for it a lot. But having Liza, who was at Studio 54 every night playing an anti-war activist, was probably not the best casting in the world. Just Kisses.
Yeah, Kisses in the Spiderweb. Yeah.
Again, they all begin with phone calls. This is Hal Prince. I'm thinking, I want to make a musical with John and Fred, who are with me in the office, of Kiss of it. My mind went, I hope he's going to say Of the Spider-Woman, because I thought to make it. Didn't hesitate for a second. What a great musical. musical that would make. And he said, of the Spider-Woman. I said, yeah, great. Let me reread it and look at the movie again. And so I just told and most of my friends, what are you, insane? That's a terrible idea. In fact, most of the musicals I've done, people thought were bad ideas. I would have thought Pygmalion was a terrible idea for a musical, so I would have said no to that offer. So everybody hears music at different things, places and voices. So, but musicals, they humble me, and after Anastasia, I put my sign back up, no more musicals. They're humbling. They're just, I don't think anyone really knows how to do them in this kind of luck. They all come together, or they don't, and usually they don't. And there's so many bright people working on musicals, but just so many people involved with every decision. And a play, you know, I can say, if you see a play of mine, I wrote it. When you see a musical, my name is on it, and I wrote every line of dialogue. But I didn't do that dance, I didn't write that song, I didn't do that bit of orchestration. And maybe that's not the orchestration I thought was right for that moment. So it's hard to say you're trying to make it look like one person. But to get 6 or 7 people singing one voice is hard. And on My Fair Lady, it worked. It sounded like one person put it all together, including George Bernard Shaw. And does him proud, it does Werner and Lowe proud, it does Mozart proud, it does everybody proud. But they are probably the defining American art form, and I see why. See, no one has ever asked me to write a play, but I've been asked to write musicals. The ones I've said yes to, there's always been a story involved, and like Spider-Woman, there's a chance to work with Hal Prince, the legend, my God. Anastasia was commissioned by a Russian producer. We were going to have the world premiere in Moscow. And I thought, how thrilling to live in Russia, the land of Chekhov and Stanislavski for half a year, and create a new American musical there. And we did it, and suddenly Broadway producers said, they sort of said, this show is too good for Moscow. We're going to try it out here first. So now it's going to go to Moscow like in 2 years from now. And everyone I've spoken to said, you dodged a very big bullet, not working in Moscow on a new American musical. That technologically they are several years behind us. They don't know transitions. You know, it's like curtain falls, hammering from backstage for 2 minutes, curtain goes up on a new set. You know, things that we just don't do anymore. And then the climate in Russia, I think, has changed quite a bit too. People have been there and said the overt anti-Semitism and homophobia is shocking to an American. Ragtime, someone called, I have the rights to ragtime. Yes, I'm sure I want to do it. Let me reread the book, which, that's a book you can read in one night, really. And I thought the only problem with ragtime is how to keep it from being 30 hours long, because every scene, every line in that book sings to me. You could write a scene here, a song there. So just whittling it down and giving it theater shape as opposed to. And I deliberately did not see the movie, which I knew was not well received. And I remember DeRoy on talk shows bewailing the movie of his book that he ruined it, blah, blah. So I said, I'm never going to watch this movie. So I wrote a treatment of it about, actually it's almost 60 pages long, which was, this is how I see it. You began to do the end. And we gave it to DeRoy, and he approved it. And I said, because I'm going to write the show. You can come to Toronto for the first preview, but we're not co-writing the show. If you don't like it now, say, this is not the way I want the story told. Fine, I will withdraw. No one had earned a penny or been paid, on spec. And he said, okay. And he came up to the preview. In Toronto, he had notes and thoughts, things he liked, things he didn't like. But he didn't write it. All right, so they said, who do you want to compose it now? I said, let's get a director. And the producer had just seen Grapes of Wrath, and everybody was like, "Where's Frank Galati been all our lives?" And I said, "What a perfect choice! Didn't even have to meet him." So we offered it to Frank, and he read the treatment and said yes. But again, who's the composer going to be? So I said, I auditioned for this job. Yeah. Well, why don't we get composer and nurses to audition? What do you mean? Give them my treatment. Say, see if this inspires any music in you. Write a song or 5, whatever you want, ideally 3 or 4. Put them on a cassette, unmarked, and let us listen. The way I got the idea totally from the way the New York Philharmonic was starting to audition musicians behind the curtain. So you know if it's a young or old, man or woman, ethnicity, you know nothing about this person except the way they play the violin. So we sent the script to, I think, the treatment to 11, all known, you've heard of everyone on the list, and 5 were insulted and said, "Go fuck yourself." I have 3 Tony Awards, and 6, I think 6 tapes, there were 6 tapes arrived, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We listened to the songs separately. The producer here, Dr. Robert, Frank in Chicago, me here in this apartment. No, I was living on 22nd Street then. And I called and I said, I will only consider working with whoever wrote the songs for tape 3. Dr. said the only songs that remotely sound like what I could imagine being on tape 3. Frank Galati, because we'd known who the names were. You're going to listen to a score by Leonard Bernstein differently than a score by Mary Jones. And I think it's a smart way to find the right composer because you're not invested in their credits. And I had a pretty unsuccessful musical, which again, I didn't take my name off it, but I parted company with it in Seattle, Catch Me If You Can. It was put together together we have 85 Tony Awards. That doesn't mean we were the right 6 people to translate that material to the stage. So I think it's such a smart way to find people. So we could have been turning down Leonard Bernstein or George Gershwin and instead hiring Mary Brown, but Mary Brown wrote the best music and lyrics for this show. We opened it, who wrote tape 3, and Lynn and Stephen, who I had seen Lucky Stiff, which I thought was talented, and Once on This Island, which I thought was amazing. Loved it. So I was thrilled it was them. And it's in my archives in Austin, not to be opened. The tapes are there, my copies and the names of the other people, but they're all, you turned down, he could have written, she could have written. And that's a true story, and I think it's a very sensible way to do musicals. That's not how things are getting produced anymore. It's a package, Whoever has the most Tonys gets the job. And it's not good producing.
The Full Monty.
That, I hadn't seen the movie, and Jack O'Brien called and said, look, this is real simple. You either want to do it or you don't. See the movie, but I can do it at my theater, so there's no problem about raising millions of dollars to do it at the Old Globe. I watched the movie and I said, Jack, the movie's not in English. I don't know what they're saying. I can't understand it. Can we get the screenplay? So I've watched it a few times with the script. I said, all right, I'll do it, but it's got to be in America, and there's got to be a woman piano player, because otherwise, in the movie, they put on records and rehearsed to records. I said, that's not going to be fun. So I created the character, the old lady. And I wrote the show in, I swear, it felt like 3 weeks. I'm sure it wasn't. And just came together. And when it opened on Broadway, less than a year later, was 95% what we did in San Diego, which is one of those. Cast never changed, just a happy show. Jerry Mitchell was the choreographer. The only change on it was David Yazbek, was someone I'd never worked with. There was no composer involved, and Adam Gettle was going to compose it. And we sort of got nowhere after a month or so, and he said, just not happening for me. He said, I have a friend. His name is David Yazbek, and here's his CD. And that's not my world, punk rock, whatever David did then with his band, but the sounds and the lyrics were extraordinary. And I said, I don't care, he's never done a Broadway show. He's the real deal. These are theater lyrics. And David wrote a brilliant score, I thought. Now, I'd say he considers himself a theater. He still does his band at Joe's Pub, but that was just a great, happy choice. And that's, again, people said, Joe Mantello's never directed on Broadway. David Yazbek's never written a Broadway show. Well, someone has to give you your first chance, or we'd all be dead. I'd be the only living American playwright. And I've got enough people nipping at my ass as it is. I've been nipped. So you need, producers with some courage and imagination. And theater is always a leap of faith. I mean, I don't care if it's Marlon Brando. He could give a bad performance, maybe. No guarantee. Because he's Marlon Brando, he's going to be Stanley Kowalski again, or The Godfather. So I think producers have gotten more timid than they used to be, and I know a lot of it is because of the enormous expense. But there's still fearless people out there. When I started, there were 5 or 6 new American plays by unknown writers without stars on Broadway a year. Which said, people like Eileen Heckert was not a star. She was known, but not. It's not the Bette Midler and Hello Dolly, which is, at the moment, that seems to be what our theater is most enraptured of. Bruce Springsteen's solo, Bette and Hello Dolly. And that's a dead end, So we need producers who are going to have vision, look to the future, like the people were in what we're meant to be talking about off Broadway. So it really hasn't changed what we're talking about. Who's going to bring in the new people? And I mean, one of the unsung heroes of the American theater to me is Robert Redford, who was on Broadway, I think, once in his life, maybe twice. His Sundance Institute, they bring about 8 to 10 playwrights out there every year. That's where Frankie and Johnny began. Kathy Bates and I developed a relationship there. He never gets credit for running this place. People hear about the Sundance Film Institute, but he's developed a lot of good theater at that place. And Edward Albee was raking in some big bucks with Virginia Woolf in those shows, and he put it back into helping the next generation of writers. And not many successful playwrights have done that. And I do believe in giving back, and I wish more people did. I'll say it that bluntly. There was a long period I thought a master class was my last play, because it felt very autumnal and valedictory to me. And I'm so glad I didn't stop. I've written 4 or 5, or I don't know how many plays since. But I felt I sort of said what I want to say. But I still have my enthusiasm for theater. It's the stamina part that is. It's hard work, theater, and when you're young, you just have more stamina, and 6 flights of stairs or nothing, 3 shows, and there's Cheetah, like, let's do the 5th show, They're ready to go on. I like Energizer bunnies to write for. I remember early in the summers I worked at a professional newspaper in Corpus Christi, not a bad paper, called the Corpus Christi Caller Times, and they asked me to interview Lyndon Johnson, who was a senator then. And while I was interviewing him about the oil depletion tax, of which I knew nothing and cared even less, the phone rang and they said, "It's Mrs. Johnson." So he's talking, in just a minute, I'm sitting where you are, gets on the phone, "Yeah, Bird." And he starts flipping through this month's Playboy. "Yeah, Bird, yeah, He looks at Miss January. "Yeah, well, tell Lucy she can't." Or, It was a real mom and pop call. "Okay, so you're saying, young man, not the old senator." So in the interview I mentioned during the phone call, Mrs. Johnson called, during which the senator
was flipping through this month's Playboy, and the editor didn't say anything. We ran the story, and he got a call from Senator Johnson's office. Who was that young? You sent this child to interview the senator and did this to him.
And I thought that's what made the story interesting to me. Like millions of men, he was talking to his wife and looking at Playboy, and I thought that was much more interesting than real completion tax. So I think I was destined to be and also playwrights, we're in such control of what people say. Writers are probably the most controlling people in the world. The script of Hamlet is what William Shakespeare wrote. Now, you can't rewrite it, You can try to get an actor to perform it a certain way, but Hamlet's going to die every performance. He doesn't get out of that one. So